Hello, today is Friday, March 22nd, and welcome to episode 313 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Lester Munson. I'm joined today by NSI's Director of Policy, John Lipsey, and my fellow Senior Fellow, Morgan Vigna. Today, we are going to talk about recent news from the Middle East that neither Chinese ships nor Russian ships will be attacked by the Houthis as they go through the Red Sea. The Houthis, of course, have been attacking all kinds of commercial shipping in the region, changing the dynamics in the local economy, changing indeed aspects of the global economy by forcing a lot of cargo to go all the way around Africa in order to get to Europe. This seems like a striking development to me. For one thing, China openly siding with basically pirates and terrorists who are attacking commercial shipping seems antithetical to Chinese interests when China's prosperity is so closely tied to global free trade. So a lot going on here. There's connections to Iran, of course, not to mention Russia. The war in Ukraine is implicated. It is also clearly linked to what is going on in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. Morgan, I want to go to you first. There's been activity at the United Nations Security Council on the attacks on the Houthis. Notably, Chinese government said recently that the US and UK counterattacks on the Houthis are against international law because the Security Council had not approved them. Seems absurd. But nevertheless, the government of China said that. What's your take on these recent developments and the role of the UN here?
So the UN is specifically the vehicle here in which, specifically the UN Security Council is a vehicle in which a number of UN Security Council resolutions have been passed. Primarily, the most important one that I think we're talking about here is the one that was passed in January, specifically condemning the Houthis for their attacks on commercial shipping lanes in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And so the United States, in response to that Security Council resolution, took self-defensive action against the Houthis. Of course, China said that those were not illegal, and that UN Security Council resolution did not validate or legitimize U.S. strikes. Regardless of what China says, the United States government says that we are defending ourselves. We have a right as a sovereign country to defend our people and our military. And that's what we're going to do. However, I will note that recently, the UN Security Council did issue a statement as early as this week condemning the attacks. Russia and China have generally been on board. They see they could have vetoed the Security Council resolution in January. They didn't. Russia tried to amend it. It didn't work. But nevertheless, what we're seeing here is China and Russia supposedly saying that they will use the UN Security Council to prevent future action against the Houthis. I think it's important to note, though, that the next sanctions resolution that needs to be updated is not until November, or excuse me, next December. So we do have some time. Nevertheless, Russia and China continue to play the spoiler in the Security Council, and we just saw earlier today them veto the UN Security Council resolution that the United States was sponsoring with respect to the hostages and a ceasefire. So I definitely see Russia and China continuing to play spoiler, but it's unclear as to how this is going to directly impact their understanding, at least with the Houthis.
John, the Biden administration announced a month and a half or so ago that the U.S. and a coalition of other countries, notably the U.K., were going to respond to Houthi attacks by attacking the Houthi attack infrastructure and eliminating the threat. The threat persists, and Houthis continue to attack commercial shipping in the region. What's your assessment of the situation here?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. I think we're sort of marking the end of the era of freedom of navigation. The U.S. it doesn't have, and its allies doesn't have the Navy, doesn't have the ammunition, doesn't have the industrial base, frankly doesn't have the will to maintain it. We're seeing that play out. Most acutely in the Red Sea, of course, but the Black Sea is contested. We're seeing the Arctic is going to be a place of region of contest. Obviously, the South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, increasingly hard power is going to be what negotiates the new era. I agree with you, Les. China obviously is it's really critical that they get their goods around the world. They're about to flood the world with even more goods. But unsurprising, the Houthis would give them a green light through the Red Sea, given the alignment between China, Russia, and Iran. Not surprising on that front. I think obviously this is causing significant economic costs for Europe and others. I think where I'm most focused is Egypt for the sort of on the ground concrete impact. Egypt is an economic mess. They've got a massive debt. The Sisi regime has essentially been propped up since taking over by other Arab states. They have a currency crisis that's ongoing. They've had to devalue the currency 3 times since 2022, and they're probably going to have to do the biggest one yet coming up here. It's in that context you had the UAE essentially give them a bailout through this $35 billion land deal that helps also secure an IMF loan. But that is a very precarious situation. And of course, right next door is the war in Gaza, which Sisi is very concerned about, and is complicating any working with the Israelis and kind of trying to find some kind of resolution there. So very very unsettled, unstable situation that the Houthis are contributing to here. But I think it's that bigger sort of lesson that it's teaching us that the security situation that the U.S. faces around the world is, we have not faced up to it yet in a serious way. We still have Congress putting in place cuts on defense spending this year coming up. So we have a long way to go before we are able to seriously confront the challenges ahead of us.
Yeah, Les, Lipsy mentioned Iran. I think it's important to note here that all roads lead to Iran when it comes to malign activity in the region. Iran is supplying Russia with drones, ballistic missiles, other types of arms to kill Ukrainians. You see China importing Iranian oil, counter to international sanctions. You see proxy groups across the region, not just the Houthis in Yemen, but proxy groups, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas, or those in Iraq and Syria. All of them are being supplied by Iran here. And so I don't think we can, have this conversation without highlighting the importance that Iran plays and the fact that the international community, particularly the UN Security Council, of which the United States is a P5 member, I might add, is not holding Iran or its other P5 members, China and Russia, notably accountable.
Yeah, I think it's an open question here. What is more to blame for the bad situation the U.S. is in? Is it the Biden administration's policy towards Iran, or is it the erosion of our defense infrastructure, where we just don't have the same capability that we used to? But certainly the combination is devastating for our interests, particularly in the Middle East, as we're seeing our inability to affect events on the ground in way too many places. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Devlin Burney, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Monday, March 25th, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Have a terrific weekend.